Okay, so today we are doing the no disclaimers book tag. The premise of this book tag is to make no disclaimers. So I can't say, I feel really bad about saying this, or I'm sorry to spoil this for you, but, or even though some of you will probably disagree, I think that I can't put any disclaimers in. So there we go. Let's get right onto it. Question number 1. Which trope in books annoy you the most? Which trope in books annoy you the most? And my answer to this is pretty obvious for anyone who has seen this channel. It is questing tropes. Oh my goodness. So this started for me when I first began reading the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I began my Lord of the Rings experience with reading The Hobbit, and then after that I read the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and there is a ton of questing that goes on throughout all four of those books, and I just did not enjoy that trope at all, and subsequently I have seen it play out quite a few more times with other books that I've read, and I just never enjoy them because the focus tends to be on such mundane things that are going on, and especially with Lord of the Rings, without giving away, okay, can't do disclaimer, especially with Lord of the Rings, where it seems to be more of a let's travel, okay, let's eat because we're hungry, is anyone coming after us, let's try to sleep without being too scared, let's travel again. It takes a long time to get to where you're going if you're doing a traveling / questing trope, and most of the time it is very boring for me. So that is question 1, and there's my answer. Question number 2. Which writer or writers do you feel are overrated or overhyped? Oh my goodness. I don't like this question. I'm just kind of looking around to see. Oh, actually, yes, I know of one. J. Kristoff. This book, Nevernight, is so overhyped that a lot of people, I feel, pick this book up because it's so overhyped, especially on BookTube. But J. Kristoff is such an overly descriptive writer that there doesn't really seem to be time for anything else other than describing things. He is incredibly overhyped. So there's my answer for that one without a disclaimer. J. Kristoff. Question 3. What are your least favourite books you've read since you've started BookTube? Okay, here we go. I am not ashamed to give a book 1 star if I feel that it definitely deserves it. Not all of the books that I'm going to show you received 1 star. No disclaimers. Okay. But I just wanted you to know that. They're not all 1 star. But books that are my least favourite since I started BookTube: The Hobbit, The Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, The Return of the King. Okay. Contemporary book Pool Boy by Michael Simmons. R.L. Stein's Goosebumps, My Hairiest Adventure. And Brene Jovenov's The Replacement. So, let's give a quick reason why. Lord of the Rings quadrilogy. Okay, The Hobbit and then the Lord of the Rings trilogy. This is a quadrilogy, including Hobbit, that I forced myself to read in April because it was my friend's birthday at the time, and I gave every single book immunity. In other words, I could not DNF them. And had I not done that, I would have DNF'd probably after Hobbit and not read any of these, or I definitely would have DNF'd after The Fellowship of the Ring. So these books are considered to be classics, but as I said, as my answer to question 1, it deals with my least favourite trope, the questing trope, and so I did not enjoy these books at all. Also, it deals with the, how do you put it? So the show versus tell trope. So if you are showing something that is occurring, you're seeing it play out as it's happening. If you're telling about something rather than showing it, you're talking about an experience that a character has had without showing it. You're kind of retelling it. And this series not only deals with the questing trope, but it also deals with the telling as opposed to showing trope. Did not like these books at all, and not afraid to say it. Michael Simmons' Pool Boy is a YA contemporary, and the premise of this book is that it is a riches to rags book that follows a boy named Michael, I think. No, Brett. Okay, Michael's the author. That follows Brett. I thought this was a really great idea and went into this book really excited to see a riches to rags trope playing out. But this is a character-driven story rather than a plot-driven story, and the plot of the story probably lasts for a total of about 5 pages. So I just did not enjoy this book at all because it had a very distinct lack of plot. The Replacement by Brene Jovenov, if I read it now, I'd probably get a different rating to what it had, but again, no disclaimers. This book is a low fantasy. In other words, it exists in our world, and the first 3/4 of this book, you don't experience anything fantastical at all, and that really annoyed me. And finally, R.L. Stine's Goosebumps, My Hairiest Adventure. I used to love the Goosebumps series. I used to read them all the time, but this book lacked anything of interest for me until the final 2.5 pages where it got really interesting and then it ended and there is no sequel to this book. So this book was very infuriating for me to read. Question number 4, a terrible ending that ruined an otherwise quality book. I will have to go with Stuart Turton's The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I love this book, and while I did not allow the ending to ruin the rest of the book for me, I think this book most qualifies to answer that question. The premise of this book is that it follows our protagonist Aidan Bishop, who is placed into a time loop in the setting of a mansion where a murder has occurred and he needs to solve this murder. The days will continue to repeat until he does solve the murder, and as a nice little twist, every day he's going to wake up in the body of a different person that was there on the day that the murdered person was murdered. The victim was murdered. It was wonderful. The first 3/4 was so amazing. Experiencing this time loop, experiencing him waking up in the body of all these different characters was such a wonderful experience. But the reveal at the end of who the murderer was horrible in my opinion. I did say at the end of this book that if there are more Stuart Turton books, I will read them, but the ending was incredibly disappointing, and had I not thought to myself, I really have to appreciate the first 3/4, it would have received a lower rating, but this book is the closest to qualify for that for me because the first 3/4 were so good. In my opinion, he just messed up the reveal. Okay, question number 5 comes with spoilers, but no disclaimers, so here we go. Which fictional characters do you wish were not killed off? But I don't want to give away who, but I will say, Mistborn, The Final Empire. Okay, my favourite book of all time, so much so that I ordered this US edition because I love the cover so much and I love the book so much. There is a death that occurs in this book. For those of you who have read it, I'm talking about the biggest death that occurs. Like, there are no deaths that rival this one in that book. It really upset me, and I had moments where I wanted to be in the film Misery, the book originally written by Stephen King, to play the role that Kathy Bates plays and tie Brandon Sanderson to that bed and make him rewrite this book with a different ending, because I grew to love this character, and the fact that this character died really upset me so much. It's still one of my favorite books of all time. That's the caveat. It is. It's still one of my favorite books of all time. But that death, man, if I could change it, if I could use a Harry Potter copyrighted time turner, I would save this character. Also, 13 Reasons Why. 13 Reasons Why is a book that revolves around a girl who killed herself 2 weeks beforehand And the main character, Guy, on the cover here, Clay Jensen, discovers a box of audio cassette tapes that detail, with Hannah's speaking voice, the 13 reasons why she killed herself. In an earlier version that the author J. Asher wrote, he actually intended for Hannah to survive, where in this book, Hannah does not survive, and he said that people will feel it a lot more if she does not survive. But I would love to have seen Hannah survive, so yeah, I would have also saved Hannah Baker. Question 6. What are some of your bookish pet peeves? Anytime that an author favors heavy description over standard prose, it is a massive bookish pet peeve of mine. Now, maybe I'm interpreting the question incorrectly, and if I am, I'm gonna re-answer this question differently in a moment, but that is a massive pet peeve of mine. If I read the first 2 chapters of a book and 3/4 of it is just description, like it's just describing how everything, how the character or characters whose perspective or perspectives we are following, what they see, think, feel, or not think, but what they see and feel and experience in metaphoric language. It's a massive pet peeve of mine, and undoubtedly your book will be DNF'd, because to me, I stop caring about the book because you're way too focused on describing those things, describing how they feel and and what they're seeing, as opposed to what's actually happening in the plot. So that's a bookish pet peeve of mine. But if you want to talk about just books in general and the way that people may misuse them, a bookish pet peeve of mine is if someone dog ears a book. I'm not a fan of that. Even if you don't have a bookmark, I'm sure you have a piece of paper lying around your house. Fold it even just once and stick it in the book. There you go, you're good. Also, I have no problem with anyone annotating their books. Murphy from BookTuber channel, Murphy Napier, who I shout out all the time, she's my favourite booktuber, annotates a lot of her books, and I think that's wonderful. If you're going to annotate your own books, that is great. That's really wonderful. I tried to do it once with Bot Wars, wherever it is. You can't see it here. But it's somewhere. Oh, it's way up there. You can't see it. I tried that once, but it just wasn't my thing. But here's a bookish pet peeve that I have. I don't have the book on me right now, but I received a library book recently, and I've started reading it this week, and there are annotations in the library book. To me, that is vandalism, because it's a library book. It's a public library book. Why? Anyone who ruins a public library book, I have issues. Okay, so that is another bookish pet peeve that I have. Oh, and also anyone who takes umbrage over the way that someone reads a book. Everyone is different. So for me, I prefer to read the physical version of a book, whether it be a paperback or a hardback. I prefer paperback. But if you are someone who prefers hardbacks, or if you are someone who prefers to read like an e-reader version, or if you're someone who prefers to listen to the audio version, who cares? One of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to books is people having issues and taking umbrage with how other people choose to ingest that information. Like, honestly, you do you, boo, and let everyone else do what they want to do. I mean, come on. Question 7. What are some books you feel should have more recognition? Well, if they're highlighted on my bookshelf, that's a bit of an indication for you. But I'm going to now turn specifically to this book, Letters to the Lost by Bridget Kemmerer. In fact, I'm going to take it out of my bookshelf, so just a moment. Quick note, I'm replacing it with Scythe, which is also a book that I want to promote. If you want to read The Book Thief, or if you went into reading The Book Thief because it is narrated by Death, you may have been, or you might end up being, as disappointed as I was. This is the book you want to read. Scythe is a book that follows the character of Death, teaching other people how to play the role of Death. It is so amazing. So definitely this one's underrated, but back to Letters to the Lost. Letters to the Lost by Bridget, where is she? There she is, Bridget Kemmerer, is a YA contemporary book that follows a girl whose mother has died, and they used to correspond by writing letters to each other because her mother travels the globe as a photographer, but her mother recently died. So, so the daughter, whose name is Juliet writes letters still to her mum and takes them to the gravesite. Meanwhile, there is a boy who works at the graveyard whose name is Declan, and he mows the lawn at the graveyard. So in order to be able to mow the lawn without harming anything, the first thing he has to do is remove all personal possessions from the gravesite, then mow, then put the stuff back. One day he removes the personal possessions from Juliet's mother's gravesite and reads Juliet's letter. He then responds to her letter, and she doesn't like that he's responded to her letter, but it turns out that they're both dealing with grief, and anonymously they write to each other back and forth, not knowing, obviously being anonymous, not knowing who each other is, and they help each other through this grief. And this book is so good, and it does not get anywhere near enough recognition, so I'm definitely going to point out this one. I also want to refer to this book, Evermore, by Alison Noel. This book revolves around a girl whose name is Eva. There you go, Evermore. Follows a girl whose name is Eva, who has psychic abilities and can also see auras, but here's the twist, she doesn't want to have these psychic abilities. This was really interesting to read because I have not read a book that follows a true psychic, one, and then two, who doesn't want to have this ability. I thought this was an incredible book. It's a little bit dark, as you can kind of see. It's kind of like a gothy kind of colour. The cover is a kind of gothic cover, and it is a kind of gothic-y book, but I loved this book, so I think it's definitely very underrated, and if you want to read a book about someone who has been gifted with abilities but doesn't want these abilities, this is a great book. It was done really, really well. So there you go. Evermore by Alison Noel. And the final question, question 8. What are your thoughts on censorship and banning books? Okay. I'm a little bit divided as far as this is concerned because I do believe in freedom of speech and I do also believe in freedom of reading whatever book it is that you want to read. But at the same time, I think that there are books out there that children are probably not ready for because of the maturity level. Now, I'm talking young children. I'm talking like 12 and under. They're probably not ready for certain things such as sexual assault, coarse language, those sorts of things. And so if a school library, like a primary/elementary school, is going to ban books because the children there are not necessarily mature enough to read those sorts of things yet, I am totally on board with that. I do find it hilarious though because my primary school, the second one I went to two in my life, had Stephen King books for their students to read. Like, I don't know if that's necessarily the best idea, but anyway. But yeah, so as far as if you're banning it for that reason, I do understand. However, to ban books for adults, that is something that I disagree with. Or if adults are just banning books in general, that there's no real good reason why you're banning them, I don't understand. Harry Potter, which is up here, you can't see them, but you can see the bottom of them anyway. Harry Potter's a great example of this. There were so many book burnings of the Harry Potter books. Why? Because they have magic. Magic is very much a massive part of the Harry Potter series, and there were certain religions that took a lot of offense to there being magic in a book series, so I really feel J.K. Rowling received the last laugh at this one, so they went out and purchased many copies of the books to burn them. One, they're purchasing J.K. Rowling's book, so she's still making money off of it, so I don't know why you would want to give money to an author that you're trying to stop people from reading. But two, by burning them, this gained global exposure, and so if anything, it's promoting the series even more, even to people who think that it is a bad book for children to read from a religious perspective, they would be picking up these books to read them to see just how bad they are. So, I mean, and then there's, of course, the rebellious children who say, well, you don't want me to read this, that's going to make me want to read it even more. I'll just read it as Harry would one night. I'll just do it under the covers with a flashlight or a torch if you're Australian. So there you go. So my thoughts are, if you are banning a book from a children's library because it has mature content that the children aren't ready for, I completely agree with that. Let children be children. Let them grow up as innocently as they can, as far as I'm concerned. So, and there are many wonderful middle grade books out there that deal with so many different good things. I was talking about Bot Wars earlier on, and it's too high on my bookshelf, so I'm not going to grab it right now. But that book is a middle grade sci-fi book that has a side plot that deals with a boy whose mother has died. He's being raised by a single father, and his father has now gone missing. And the boy goes through a ton of thoughts about how he feels being raised by a single dad. I thought this was amazing because when I was younger, my mum and dad divorced. I was raised predominantly by my mum when I was younger. So I thought that dealt with that topic really heavily. There are books that deal with grief and loss and many other issues in middle grade that are done in a really good way for that sort of a target audience. So I have no problem with anyone banning a book because it is way too mature for a young child. Excuse me. But in saying that, banning a book for everyone purely because you don't like the subject matter, especially adults telling other adults that it's a sin to read Harry Potter simply because it contains magic. I mean, by that logic, you'd have to burn every single fantasy book. I mean... And that's another thing that really annoys me as well, is burning books. Like... But anyway, freedom to read, especially once you get past a certain age, which I'm going to say is 13, because once a child turns 13, the target audience for 13-year-olds age rating is young adults, and there are young adult books out there that deal with really, not really harsh, but, well, yes, actually, there are some young adult books that deal with really harsh subject matters. I will say, because apparently Nevernight is a young adult book, which it's not. It's just not, but it's marketed. Someone talk to me about this, really, because how is Nevernight a YA? Swearing, sexual assault, how is this a YA? And it's such a graphic sexual assault beginning. Breathing. Okay. So, what are your thoughts on censorship and banning books? If it is for the sake of little children because their content is way too mature for them, I completely agree. Let kids be kids for as long as they possibly can. But if it's for any other reason, then I completely disagree. And as far as censorship in general, and I don't just mean books, I mean by any medium, any sort of censorship, I completely disagree with that. If you are writing a book, writing a play script, writing a script that's going to be a film or a TV show, then you should have the freedom to write about whatever you want to write about. And if this is something that parents are especially concerned about their children reading or seeing, then don't show them the show or the film or go to the play or pick up the book. And same with adults. If this is not something that you think is going to be incredibly offensive to you, then you don't need to read it or watch it. You just don't need to do that. So I don't understand. There's a ton of censorship that's going on. That has been going on ever since I was born, and I just don't understand why everyone else has to miss out on the creativity of the original creator purely because there are people out there who don't like it. If you don't like it, don't experience it. I mean, is it really that hard? Like, I want to give you an example of a TV show. This is, we're at the end of the book tag, so if you want to leave, you can leave, but I need to take a moment to stand on my soapbox and talk about what is going on here. So first of all, I want to talk about Big Brother, then I want to talk about South Park. So Big Brother in America, hugely popular show. I don't think it's ever been cancelled, nor do I think has Big Brother UK or Big Brother Canada. But Big Brother in Australia has been cancelled at least twice. The second time was because the ratings were rather low, but the first time was because in Australia, the Big Brother setup was very different. We're now becoming more like the American show, but the setup was very different in that, yes, we had our nominations show, we had our evictions show, we had our standard shows, which were called The Daily Show, but we also had a show back in the day called Uncut. Uncut was a show that showed anything that you can't show at an early time slot. So if it's dealing with sexual issues, nudity, swearing, any kind of mature content went into this one episode a week called Big Brother Uncut that was on at a very late time. During one of the episodes of Big Brother Uncut, there was an incident that occurred. I'm just going to say it's called the turkey slap. You can look it up. I'm not going to go into detail here because it's not the point. But there was an issue that occurred that offended a lot of people and it caused the show to get cancelled. I disagree with this being the case. I personally think that that issue was dealt with rather well in the show. The show's producers and Big Brother dealt with that really well, and the show should have kept going, so it doesn't make sense. But now I want to move on to South Park, the second thing, because this one is a lot more known. So, very early on in the South Park series, for those of you who don't know, South Park is an adult cartoon that deals with a ton of satire. Okay, very early on in South Park, there was a couple of episodes called the Superhero Best Friend episodes or something like that, where there were these gods that came together religious figures, I guess, that came together to become part of a superhero team, including Jesus and Buddha, and the Indian one, which I don't remember his name right now. I'm sorry. And Moses and others that came together. And one of them that they included was the prophet from the Muslim faith, Muhammad, or Muhammad, depending on how you pronounce it. But anyway, Muhammad. Anyway, Muhammad was shown, there was no issue, everything was fine until it wasn't. Then, all of a sudden, it became a taboo thing to show Muhammad because something happened where a country published a cartoon that showed Muhammad, and those people wound up dying because they were killed because people were offended that it was shown. So South Park created a double episode feature ripping on another adult cartoon show called Family Guy, where they were going to show an episode of Muhammad. In the second part of this double episode show, the writers of South Park intended to show what Family Guy were showing to show Muhammad. It was a 3-second clip of Muhammad. I think he was accepting like a cup of tea or something, and that was literally it. Comedy Central got really scared, and there was a little note that came up on the screen saying, in this clip, Muhammad accepts a cup of tea, but Comedy Central won't allow us to show this clip. They won't allow it. So they censored it. And from then on, Muhammad has been censored. Anytime he comes up in a show, he is censored. I disagree with this. While I am not of that religion, and so I cannot fully appreciate why it is such a big deal, my thought is, there is such a thing in this world as freedom of speech, and certainly it's massive in the States, but I think it's something that we all should have. Freedom of speech. If you're a creator and you want to create something, no one should have the power to stop you from wanting to create something or to show something or for you to experience something. To then go ahead and censor it because the big wigs think that we can't handle it and that everyone can't handle it when they always have had the choice not to watch it or not to read it is something that I just completely disagree with. So yes, in my opinion, Comedy Central should have shown Muhammad. Because anyone who disagrees with Muhammad being shown should have just not watched the episode. So that is my thought on censorship. This has gone on far too long, but I need to make my point there because I just don't agree with censorship for adults. I only agree with censorship for children who aren't mature enough to read about really overly mature topics such as people being killed, sexual assault, and sensitive language. But anyway, we're going to leave that there. I'm going to let you guys go. Peace, blessings, and so much love. What do you think of what I've brought up here today? Do you have any comments, thoughts, and or questions? Feel free to leave them in the comment section below. This is an open forum, you guys, so if you disagree, feel free to let me know. I'm more than happy for you to let me know, and we can open up a dialogue here. But in the meantime, I'm letting you guys go. Peace, blessings, and so much love. I post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I'll see you again soon. Mwah. Thanks for watching, and happy reading. Bye, guys. Bye.